Isn't eating plants also violent? They have emotions too, so then what can we eat? It would be nice if we could live on air. It would be nice if we could tread through life, however many years we have, without ever causing pain or suffering, let alone death, to anyone. It would be so wonderful if we never had to kill anything or harm anything. Unfortunately, we can't live on air. Unfortunately, every day we are killing bacteria within ourselves. Anytime you ever take an antibiotic, you're killing millions and millions and millions of little living bacteria within yourself. Unfortunately, every time we step on the grass, inevitably, we're killing something. Smaller than the bunny rabbit or the squirrel that we can see are all kinds of tiny, tiny little beings that live in the grass. The tragedy is that in order to live, there is an impact. On one end of the spectrum are people, for example, like the Jain community, who have made a decision. Not only do they not eat animals, but they don't eat any root vegetables. So they won't eat potatoes, they won't eat carrots. They won't eat anything that, in pulling it up from the earth, actually causes such a disturbance to the earth that innumerable little insects are injured. On the other end is the super size me community of, bacon for breakfast and hamburgers for lunch and dinner. Most of us fall somewhere in between. But the question is actually very sincere and beautiful, and I want to look at it deeply for a minute. The point of our lives is about how can we create as much life, as much joy, as much peace as possible. Since we can't live on air, we have to eat something. Vegetables, fruits, particularly things that the earth gives up to us. I mean, every time you eat an apple, you're not hacking down the whole tree and everything that lives in it. You're getting what Mother Earth has given. Now, yes, as the question asked, yes, they actually do have feelings. It's not a silly question. Science has shown. They've put electrodes up against plants and have shown that they absolutely do respond to different tones of voices. If you say to a plant, "I'm going to kill you," amazingly, the plant actually responds in a way that can be picked up by a meter. However, that doesn't mean that it justifies the violence that eating meat is. And that's usually where these questions come up. The questions rarely come up from someone who says, "I'm going to learn to live on air and sunshine because eating vegetables causes too much damage." The question usually comes up from people of, "Well, why do I have to be a vegetarian? I mean, the plants feel also, so what's the difference?" And this is the sort of justification and rationalization that is an inherent part of our human existence. And it's really important to look at it and to call it what it is and to see it. It's the exact same thing that anyone who's ever been on a diet has experienced when, okay, you start a new diet, then somehow, whatever, you eat a cookie. But then what happens? After we eat the cookie, what happens? Oh, well, I mean, I've ruined my diet anyway. I might as well eat the whole bag. Like, let's order a pizza now because I've ruined my diet. And oddly enough, there actually seems to be some sort of a rationale there because so many of us do it. Objectively, though, we all understand, on a serious note, that there's a very big difference. Even if all you're doing is counting calories, there's a very big difference between one cookie and a bag of cookies and a pizza. And in the same way, just because plants have a response, an electrical response to tones of voices, to different sounds, we cannot use that piece of information, like the cookie we ate, to justify the carnage that the meat industry creates. Let's look at it a different way for a moment. Let's say even for a moment that a cucumber had exactly the same emotional state, exactly the same neurological response to a cow. We all know it's not true. But let's just assume for a moment it did, just for the sake of argument. Eating the cucumber is only violent to the cucumber. Eating the cow is not only violent to the cow. Eating the cow is violent to our human brothers and sisters with whom we share this planet. Eating the cow is violent to every farmer whose field is desiccated and who's on the verge of committing suicide because he has no harvest and he can't feed his family. Eating the cow is violent to our water supply, to our air supply, to every single person on earth who lives on the edge of water that is rising with climate change. The meat industry is the single greatest contributor to climate change. This is by a UN report. This is not Ki Sadhviji says. This is UN report. The single greatest contributor to climate change is the livestock industry. I'm not going to take up all our time tonight to go into it, but whether we look at carbon dioxide, whether we look at methane, whether we look at deforestation, whether we look at water usage, whether we look at energy usage, the meat industry is the single largest culprit. It also, and this is where I was talking about violence, it also is pulling food out of the mouths of tens of thousands of children who are starving to death every day. We produce enough food to feed more than 10 billion people. And yet, over 1 billion people sleep hungry every night. Tens of thousands of children are dying of starvation each day. And the reason for that is that the food that we produce, instead of being used to feed people, is being cycled to feed the animals who become the hamburgers and the hot dogs and the chicken McNuggets. It takes, I'll only give you one statistic, I promise. It takes 16 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of beef. 16 pounds of rice, wheat, soy, corn. You feed it to the cow. Cow eats and eats and eats for years. A lot of it's digested. It doesn't all turn into meat. At the end of the day, pound by pound, for every 16 pounds of grain you put into that cow, you end up with a pound of beef. But to make rice, to make bread, to make pasta, pound for pound. So what that means is every single time I choose to eat meat, I am literally saying, I deserve to eat for 15 other people. Let them go to hell. Let them starve. Let them die. I deserve their food. That is a lot more violent than eating a cucumber. I'm not denying the research that shows that they also have consciousness, which is beautiful. That's what we talk about in here every night. Isha vasyamidam sarvam, yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Everything in the universe is pervaded by the divine. Even cucumbers, even lettuce, even spinach. But that doesn't mean that by any scale, any standard, any religion, any path, any value system that is worth anything, that you could compare starving people to the electrical response that a cucumber experiences. Again, though, the last point to mention about this is, because everything is interconnected and because there's consciousness in everything, this is why we only take what's needed. Just because a cucumber is lower on the totem pole of consciousness than our starving brothers or sisters doesn't mean I eat more than I need. Wherever we're eating on that chain, wherever we're shopping on that chain, it's not just what we're eating, whatever we're wearing on that chain, it needs to be as nonviolent as possible. We've spoken a lot over the last few days about ahimsa and nonviolence. So as low on the chain as possible. When you go camping in America, in the national parks, they've got signs as you go through the ranger stations that say, take only memories and leave only footprints. And if we can think about our life on earth like that, obviously here we'd like to leave more than footprints in terms of inspiration, in terms of joy, in terms of peace. But what we take should be as close to just memories as possible.